Story 1. Being a good listener. Not trying to fix everything and everyone. Respecting boundaries and space. Knowing that no means no, and that the word no doesn't have to be spoken aloud. Having some direction in life instead of being a leech. Being emotionally available and in touch with his emotions. Being mindful of people's differences. Understanding that the strong should protect the weak, not take advantage of them. Stuff like that. Story 2. They seem genuinely happy and empathetic. They understand conversations go both ways and don't try to hog the spotlight unless the situation calls for it. Story 3. Normally, people associate being well-worded, educated, or polite with a really good upbringing. However, speaking for myself, having been born dirt poor, you can also achieve that through libraries. In other words, self-education. Story 4. A subtle sign that someone had good parenting is when they show genuine gratitude and courtesy, no matter the situation. From a simple thank you when picking up their coffee to being kind to strangers and friends alike. Story 5. I think the ability to interact and socialize with people from different generations is an underappreciated characteristic. It seems like a lot of people grow up with a sense that they can only be friends with others in a very narrow peer age bracket. When I meet someone who can interact in a kind and natural way with my kids and my parents, I know that this is someone who sees people as individuals and not as categories, and to me, that is the sign of someone who has their life together. I think it's totally possible to be this way no matter your family, but also that growing up in a multi-generational family who are close in a healthy way makes it a lot easier. My own teenage kids can totally interact and hold their own with my friends and with their grandparents, and are also kind of little children, and no matter what else I've done right or wrong in raising them, that one thing makes me feel like I did something right. Story 6. Manners. Ability to read the room and gracefully engage appropriately while maintaining a comfortable emotional distance. Self-actualized. Immediately recognize when to walk away, and the ability to do so quietly and without announcement. Story 7. Making eye contact and being able to hold a polite conversation without looking at their phone constantly. Being kind to the elderly. Owning up to your mistakes. Story 8. I'd say it's when they show genuine respect for others, no matter who they are. Like, they don't make a big deal out of treating everyone with kindness, but it's clear they've been taught to be considerate. Also, people who can handle conflict calmly without resorting to drama or insults usually come from solid upbringings. They just know how to communicate and make people feel comfortable. Story 9. They say things like, well, I am sure that I would have ended up in pretty much the same spot where I am if I had ended up in a home as a baby and not been raised by my parents. This stayed with me. Story 10. Being understanding without being forced and owning up to mistakes in a mature way. I told my mom how one of my family members is the main topic of conversation for my therapy sessions. She looked at me and said, "You tell them everything you need to in order to heal. I don't care if it was the wrongdoings that your dad and I ever did or what it is. You need to talk about it and heal." Story 11. I remember going to summer camp as a kid and meeting Milo. Milo was big on attention-seeking and validation and would take food from the cafeteria back to his bunk, like eggs and toast. I remember thinking he was just weird, but I think looking back and knowing what I know now, he was probably being neglected at home. Thin as a rail and probably malnourished, so he wanted as much food as he could get and just wanted someone to acknowledge him. Pretty sad stuff. Story 12. They treat everyone with respect, regardless of status, and show genuine gratitude for small things. It's the quiet confidence and kindness that often gives it away. Story 13. My best friend had great parents and a happy home life. I've never known anyone with that before. He enjoys visiting with his family, calls them often, but has healthy and appropriate boundaries that they respect. He says the only negative that came from this is he trusts people too much and tries to always give the benefit of the doubt. He's also an innate carer, which is so funny because he is the very definition of a curmudgeon otherwise. Story 14. Just overall great manners, saying please and thank you, cleaning up the table for waitstaff at restaurants, etc. Shows a sign of respect for others and lack of entitlement, in my opinion. Costs absolutely nothing to be polite. You don't know what kind of day someone is having. Story 15. Recently saw a family leave all their leftover food on the table in a McDonald's. They also left outside food, like snacks and beer cans all over the area. What a trashy family. So, bussing your own food at a self-service restaurant is my answer. Story 16. Kindness and magnanimity. Only people who have had fortunate and ideal upbringing would be familiar with these. I experienced these from my significant other. I sometimes don't like my mother-in-law because she can be meddlesome, but whenever I'm angry or annoyed at her, I remind myself she raised my significant other almost single-handedly since my significant other has an absentee dad. I'm grateful for her and can't stop myself from putting her needs before mine many times because she is my significant other's mom, and my significant other truly is one of a kind. I even prioritize my mother-in-law over my own parents, except when there's urgency or special circumstances like whoever's needs should be addressed first. Story 17. Never show up to a party empty-handed unless sincerely directed not to. Do not make a mess at a restaurant or someone else's home. Treat all types of staff well, especially people more disadvantaged than you. Tip 20% when you're obligated to. Practice table manners. Keep your volume down in public. Maintain basic levels of decorum. And have respect for privacy, both your own and others. Be open-minded about different perspectives and life experiences. Story 18. Basic answer but respect. Respecting restaurant staff, holding the door open for people, respecting police officers, the basics. If you can't do the basics, your parents clearly couldn't either. Story 19. When they say they miss being with their parents, or when tragedy comes and they say, I wish my mom or dad were here right now. No idea what that is like. Story 20. In the case of my husband, he doesn't speak ill of anyone unless really provoked. He doesn't talk behind their backs or call anyone names unless, like I said, provoked or under confrontation, whereas in my household that was bonding and acceptance. See, raging narcissist mother. My husband's family is kind, loving, and supportive, and it shows through such subtle ways in how he goes about things. Story 21. They send thanks emails after downloading PDFs and apologize to their plants for watering them 5 minutes late. Sorry, Timothy the Succulent, that YouTube video really got me sidetracked. Story 22. Confidence. My husband exudes it. He got endless encouragement and support and feels secure in himself and his choices, all things to which I cannot relate. Story 23. They are courteous, respectful, and considerate towards others, doing small things like cleaning up after themselves in public, putting their shopping carts back, and being polite towards service workers and strangers. Story 24. My boyfriend stays positive no matter what and can always see the best in people or give everyone the benefit of the doubt. He comes from a very happy, normal, loving family. Story 25. I didn't have an overall good upbringing, but my family definitely taught me manners. Setting the table for dinner when you have guests, staying at the table until everyone finishes eating, and so on. I thought they were so uptight. Then I grew up and experienced how awkward it can be to grab a plate from the cabinet in someone else's house, or to be the only one still at the table. Not uptight, just considerate. Story 26. To me, a good upbringing isn't synonymous with never having a problem. My take is that a good upbringing teaches you that you do have problems, how to avoid them when that's possible, and how to deal with them and survive, even prosper when the circumstances allow, and to come out the other side with a positive and loving mindset rather than being crushed. To do that is a real accomplishment, and if your upbringing helps you do that, in my mind that must be an impressively good upbringing. Story 27. An overall lack of empathy. Being able to empathize when you have not been through anything close to that is incredibly difficult. And you can tell because a lot of them have a poor sense of depth and a poor sense of reality. Many of my friends who have good childhoods do not understand and cannot fathom how important certain things are. They are very out of touch, kind of like how people who were raised with a lot of money do not understand the importance of money and cannot fathom how $500 is a lot of money to some people. Story 28. When they are really able to listen instead of jumping to conclusions or inserting their opinion or story into your experience, it shows they have a solid sense of self and are empathetic, yet don't entangle your emotions or experience with their own. Story 29. 1. How they act when they are angry. Are they willing to share with others, especially if they have fewer things to share? How they interact with other people? How they speak about others? Are they willing to help someone in need? Story 30. This should go for all men, regardless of upbringing, but respect towards women. Acting like a gentleman, never taking advantage of them, manipulating them, or getting creepy with them. Usually, this goes hand in hand with having a great mother and a positive relationship with her, or just great parenting and role models overall for those who may come from non-traditional households. Story 31. I think this is a silly question because you cannot really tell unless you get to know someone and their story. Like a lot of these, I can say I do, but it is not because I enjoyed my upbringing. Story 32. Manners as a whole. Correcting someone with good intentions and in an appropriate fashion so as not to embarrass the other person. Willingness to give to others with joy. Focusing on the principle of issues as opposed to the gossip or surface level. Strong self-reflection and the ability to express themselves with composure. Hygiene and home cleanliness. Story 33. I grew up really poor and spent a year of my adult life living in an extremely old-money wealthy town in Connecticut for work. One day, I went out to dinner at an Italian restaurant with acquaintances. I mentioned an aversion to pasta when I was younger because it was our hard times meal. My family ate spaghetti for weeks when my dad wasn't working in the winter. I've had other people I've encountered in life tell me similar stories of their family eating something cheap over and over because it was all they could afford at the time. No one at the table could relate. They never had a hard time where their family struggled to put food on the table. I was shocked, but I guess they had a good upbringing. Story 34. The way they treat people who are in no position to benefit them. Somebody with a good upbringing will treat them just the same way they treat anybody else. Story 35. They remember other people not by what they can do for them, but by interesting things about them. They do not expect everything to fall apart all the time, so they are relaxed when approaching new situations. They actually tell their parents and family things about their lives. Story 36. When people use yes, sir, or ma'am and say please and thank you, hold the door for others, look people in the eyes when speaking to one another, and show genuine courtesy, it sets them apart. Story 37. How they handle being told no. I can't fathom what goes through the minds of grown adults who flip out and throw tantrums over being told no. Like a toddler. Story 38. A good manner, or one of the signs of good upbringing, one could say, is the ability to treat other people with respect and to feel for them. When one is raised in a friendly and caring home, whenever they handle others, they are gentle, tolerant, and receptive. They are normally good listeners who always make the other person feel important. Another subtle sign is courtesy, or the lack of it, in the home and in the company's interactions with the public. This is not only about distinguishing between which fork is used at a dinner party and other such conventional manners such as uttering the words please and thank you, opening doors for others, and observing people's personal space. Other characteristic signs are confidence without arrogance. A well-bred person is very confident in himself, but at the same time, he does not become conceited and knows that others are helpful. Finally, those who received a good upbringing show certain work-related values, such as responsibility and reliability. They arrive on time, they deliver on the commitments they make, and they own it when things go wrong. Story 39. When people have good manners, you can tell when having manners is second nature to someone. They didn't learn it from a book, and it wasn't forced on them because of circumstances. It was something they learned as they grew up and were raised using them. Story 40. Generally and consistently content in life. They are the ones who can sincerely smile and joke lightheartedly when everyone else is cynical and negative about the situation. Story 41. A subtle sign of a good upbringing is when someone truly listens in conversations, showing genuine interest in others. They ask thoughtful questions and make people feel heard and valued. It's a quiet sign of empathy and good manners learned early on. Story 42. I can usually tell in their tone of voice, as well as if they are kind and patient toward others. There is a specific royal-like cadence in the voice of people with good childhoods. They speak softer and more eloquently, especially if they were raised upper class. Story 43. They have manners. They speak well and do not swear every other word. They are kind to others, especially their family and siblings, as well as older adults and disabled people. Story 44. A friend of mine leaves the light in the hallway on until everybody is home at night, so nobody trips or falls. My dad would give me a very long talk about saving electricity and money. He was beyond me. In every other aspect of life, they're winning too. They even have a swing that's firmly anchored in the ground in their backyard. Story 45. Great teeth. Even good parents can neglect their children's teeth. Someone who has always had good teeth probably had attentive and wealthy parents. Story 46. It depends on what definition of good we are going with. But let's say principled and compassionate. My parents divorced when I was 9, and it became clear that they were never well suited. While they figured this out and then separated, they never made the house a war zone, never used me or my sibling as pawns, and never badmouthed the other. That set a benchmark for me, so I grew up thinking that if people who didn't love each other or want to be together could be that respectful, compassionate, and decent to each other, then you should be nothing less than that with the person you do want to be with. It set the bar high on how to treat your fellow human.